One really important skill for social selling is being able to build lists of the right people in Sales Navigator. In this video, I'm going to show you how. The first thing you're going to want to do is to create a lead list. So up here at the top of the home screen, you're going to see leads, and you click on that. Once you're here, you can create a new list. You come over to here on the right-hand side and create a lead list. Now I'm going to show you an example where I'm going to fill out some of the lead filters to create this list. So I'm going to say Nashville small business owners. So I'm going to go ahead and create this list. So now I have a list to add people to. I'm going to click here on lead filters. Now, if you are going after bigger companies, you could go to accounts here at the top, create account lists, and look for the right accounts instead. For me, I'm focusing on small business owners, so typically the decision maker is going to be the business owner. So if you're going after these smaller companies, most of the time lead lists make a lot more sense. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this button here next to the search bar, lead filters. This pulls up the lead filters over here on the left-hand side. Depending on the type of people that you're going after, you're going to have to really play around with the different filters to find the right ones. But I'm going to go over a couple of the common ones right now. So going after smaller businesses, I'm going to want to select self-employed, 1 to 10 employees, 11 to 50, and then maybe 51 to 200. Now, if you're going after mid-market and larger, then you could select some of these other filters. Now, one thing I know about the Nashville area is that the people who tend to resonate with me, a lot of them used to work at Ramsey Solutions. So one thing I could do is I could look for people who specifically worked at Ramsey Solutions, and I can include that. So now that narrows down my list to 654 people, and I could filter down from there. I'm going to go ahead and take that off. If you're going after a specialized company like an educational institution, government agency, nonprofit, then this would make sense. Also, if you're going after larger companies focusing on publicly held or privately held companies, you might want to do that. For me, I'm going to leave that off because it ends up sometimes narrowing down a little bit further than what I need. You can look at the company headquarters location, but again, since I'm going after these smaller businesses, I'm going to use the geography down here in a second. Job function can be really important if you're going after people at larger companies. So you could look for people whose function is marketing or sales. Sometimes focusing on a title can be too narrow since people use different titles within different organizations. So this function can be super helpful. It could be operations, it could be engineering. There's a lot of different things you could do here. You could also do job title. So what I'm going to do under job title is owner, co-owner. I'll do co-founder, co-owner. I'm going to do consultant, partner, founder. So this should find me most of the people that I am looking for. You could look for seniority level, past job titles, years of their current company, years in current position. So there's lots of different filters you can do there. Okay, so let's keep going. I'm going to look for geography, and this is where I'm going to really narrow this down. So right now you can see there's 12 million results. That's obviously completely unfeasible list size. So I'm going to go with Nashville, metropolitan area, Nashville, Tennessee. There's two Nashville metropolitan areas. I'm going to also look for Franklin because that's a pretty hopping spot as well. I'm going to actually come back up here and I'm going to add in CEO because that's going to be another common one that people have. Now you can see 40,000 results. That's way too broad still. So we're going to keep narrowing this down. So I'm going to look for specific areas. So I'm going to do business consulting, IT consulting. I'm going to do marketing, services, operations, consulting. I'm going to do strategic management services. So I could keep adding or subtracting to these industries, but you could see that's now narrowed me down from 40,000 results to 2.5 thousand results. All right, so I want to keep narrowing this down because 2.5 thousand is still way too many people to have in this list. So I'm typically not going to be focusing on these 51 to 200. So I'm going to remove that filter. All right, so 2.5 thousand is still way too many people. I'm going to show you a couple ways to continue to narrow this down. So maybe this is too many. So I could get rid of these and only focus on business consulting services. So that brings it down to 1.5 thousand. All right, so I'm going to add those back in and get us back up to this 2.5 thousand. And we're going to look at a couple other ways to narrow this down. Now, another way to narrow this down is to use this toggle here for people who have posted on LinkedIn. Now, if you click on the question mark, it shows you people who have posted on LinkedIn in the last 30 days. People who are active are going to be much more likely to engage with your content. It gives you content to interact with so that you can build rapport up front. They're also going to just be a lot more likely to respond to a direct message or anything like that. So narrowing by people who have posted is a great place to start if your list is too big. So now 602 people, that is not a crazy size list, but it's still a little bit on the larger side. So if I wanted to save all 602 of these people to this list, I could click select all, save to a list, and then click on this Nashville business owners. Now, one frustrating thing about Sales Navigator is that you can only save 25 people at a time. I would have to go through over 20 pages, selecting 25 people at a time and saving them to a list. But then what you would want to do is go to that list and start looking through these folks, and you could narrow it down by bumping people from the list. You could also go through these one at a time to make sure they'd be a good fit before adding them to the list. Either way is fine. It just depends on whether you want to kind of comb through and only add people to these lists who are the right fit up front, or whether you want to bulk add a bunch of people and then go through and refine over time. Something else you could do is hit this toggle, and it's going to save all of these search results. So once you find something that works well, for me, it might be the head count, their current job title, posted on LinkedIn in the last 30 days, and then these industries. And I could leave off the geography and then save this search. So I could use this exact same setup in different geographical locations. So I could do one in Cincinnati, I could do one in Minneapolis, I could do one in Cincinnati. So I could find these groups of people who share all of these things in common. There's another great way to narrow down lists that is extremely effective. So I have a couple friends in the Nashville area. And so what I could do is come down here to connections of, and then I could look up people that I know in the area. So I could look up Eva Daniel. By the way, if you don't follow Eva Rose Daniel, she's an amazing speech coach consultant, and I would highly recommend following her. So what it's doing now is it's showing me people who meet all of these qualifications who are also connections of Eva. So now that's 22 people. I could reach out to Eva and send her 2 or 3 of these folks. So maybe Zach Estes is one of the people I would want to reach out to. And then Karen Bannister and Harris III. Maybe these are 3 people that I think would be a great fit for what I do. I could just reach out to Eva and say, hey, would you be open to making a connection? If she says yes, then I could add those people to a list and start nurturing the relationship with them. Or the other way I could do it is add these people to a list, start engaging with them, connect with them, and go from there. So I could add the folks to the list from Eva, and then I could look up somebody else I know in the area. Brian Lawrence. And I could add the 8 people from his list. Some of them overlap, some of them are new folks. And then I could look up Casey Maxwell, and I could add people to the list. So now I could end up getting, some of these people overlap, so maybe I end up with a 40 or 50 person tailored lists that are connected with people who I already know, and I could start building relationships with them and going that route. So far, we've been focusing on what I would do to build a lead list for my business. But let's talk about what it would take to reach a lead list to reach larger companies. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you could use the accounts feature to search for the types of companies overall. You could build an account list and then search for leads within those accounts. But to keep it simple, we're going to focus on lead lists right now. So let's say that I run a video company where I focus on nonprofits, and our typical starting projects are around $20,000. And our typical client spends at least $100,000 a year. That means I need to focus on companies that are a little bit larger than the ones that we were looking at a minute ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the company type, and I'm going to put in nonprofit. Then I'm going to go with company headcount, and let's just go ahead and add in 500 to 1,000. 5,000 to 5,000 and 5,000 to 10,000. The 10,000 plus don't really want to work with companies that are that big for this particular company, so this is the range that we're looking in. All right, well that brings us to 9 million results, so we need to narrow it down further. What we could do is put a job function in as marketing. And then we're going to look for people who are a seniority level of director, CXO, vice president. So that's going to kind of get us the director level up through the C-suite. So now that brings us down to 16,000 results. And then what we could do is come down to industry. So let's say that we are focusing on a nonprofit that serves higher education. Well, that narrows us down to 685 results. Now, if you were going to be this specific, this is probably a decent list size to start rolling with. Or let's say that you're working with people who are in hospitals, and it's a nonprofit focused on serving hospitals. It'd be 1.5 thousand. So you probably would want to narrow this down a little bit. We could also filter it down by geographic location. So we could go, okay, we want to reach these nonprofits, this particular function, but we want to focus on people who are in only this Cincinnati area, which is where I'm located. So I could put in Cincinnati, and that brings me to 83 results. So I could focus on how do I build relationships with nonprofits in this area. So let's say that the nonprofit that you're focusing on is not in one of the industries listed on LinkedIn. What do? Well, you could search for keywords. So let's say that you do something with animals. You could put animal as a keyword in there. Then this is going to pull up people whose profiles say something about animals. It also take a little bit of filtering because you can see this person works for Best Friends of Animal Society. This person works for MWI Animal Health, but there could just be something in these people's profile where they say they like animals. So you're going to have to filter a little bit more if you're doing something like this. Or you could do something like animal welfare. That's going to narrow it down to 15 people. So you can use keywords to try to narrow it down further. You could do job placement. You could also focus on people who work with military or veterans. So this gives you an idea of how you could create lead lists using a couple different filters plus keywords to be able to reach more people effectively.